Well, it's finally that time, folks. After much delay, much dismay, much of everything, we're doing it. It is the final thoughts on Moon Knight. I've decided it's coming. It's time. We're doing it. It's officially that time of our lives. Let's get into this. So I'm pretty sure, like everybody else who's a fan of Moon Knight, I was super excited for this show's announcement. I was like, okay, they're doing it. That we finally come to this point where we ran out of B-list and C-list characters. Now we're doing the D-list. I didn't think it would ever happen. I still stand by that. It still amazes me we got this far, not just in terms of the MCU, but in storytelling, where we're really reaching for the bottom of the barrels now. And look, I say that as somebody who's a fan of Moon Knight. It's weird we got here. It really is. It truly is. So they announced it. Disney Plus was doing it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was never sold on everything Disney Plus was doing, but okay, you can do some stuff there and take some chances. Creative team was very interesting, sticking more to like an Egyptian creative team with Mohamed Diab. I'm like, that's good. I trust that. Then you got like Moorhead and Benson coming. I'm like, they're talented guys. They understand horror and psychological thrillers and those kind of things. They're all very talented. And Jeremy Slater as your showrunner. I'm like, okay. I like these guys. They're very talented, and I think putting those all together, you can get a very interesting story built around this. I think that's very fun, and I can get behind that all together. So I'm like, yes, that's a good behind-the-scenes team. Who are you going to get in front of the camera? Oscar Isaac? Oh, he's a good choice. I mean, I like that choice a lot. He's very talented. He seems like he'd only want to work for Disney again if he's given an opportunity to play a very intense character. I like that he went for it. Ethan Hawke's the villain. That's a big name for a show like this. That's awesome. I'd love to see what Ethan Hawke's doing. F. Murray Abraham's going to do Khonshu. Oh, that's a little bit different. Okay, I could see what you're doing. That's kind of interesting. May Kalamawi, not a name I'm familiar with, but she's going to be doing the Marlene character. Okay, I like that. I can see that being something special. Turns out it is, because she's the best part of the show. Talked a lot about that, but we'll get to it in a bit here. So you got all these things coming together, make for something special. I'm like, okay, cool. Egyptian directors and talents behind the scene, costume designers who work on these big properties. You have a showrunner who is familiar with genre pieces. You got guys that work in horror and thrillers that can come in and make this work. A talented team of people like Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac. Those are big names, talented men who know how to do character work. So yeah, I'm kind of getting excited for this. And then we see the first trailer. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting choice for the accent. Oh, the suit is fascinating. I don't hate it, but I wouldn't say I love it. It's all interesting choices that feels like it's going to be like this psychological horror thing where Mark's not going to realize he is Moon Knight. And I'm like, okay, that's a choice that I personally don't think I'd go for, but okay. So before the show comes out, I'm like, I am hesitant, but I'm excited. This is my character. I like it. Another thing, too, I do want to reiterate it here. I've said it before. You don't need this character to be R-rated. I know there's people, fans in particular on these forums are just like, this character should have been like a Netflix R-rated where he's killing people and doing bad shit all the time. Like, no. There's only one arc of Moon Knight where he straight up cuts a guy's face off, and it's arguably one of the most demented and uninteresting versions of the character. So I'm like, you don't need to do R-rated. This character has no intention of being R-rated. You don't need to do it. So people are complaining that's too Disney-friendly. Shut up. That's the character. He's not unfriendly, but it's like, come on. Grow up. Not everything has to be dark and brooding. No character in the Marvel Universe needs to be R-rated. None of them. I don't care what you say. None of them are built to be R-rated. They don't need to be R-rated. So, okay. The show comes out. I do weekly reviews of it, and as I'm doing weekly reviews, I'm starting to see a pattern in myself as I'm doing, like, okay, I'm giving the show a lot more leeway because it's weekly, I don't know the full picture, and I'm just excited that I could be here to talk about it. Maybe I don't love what we're seeing, but the fact that I could talk about it is exciting to me. So now that it's done, we've had time to let it pass. We've had a full Marvel movie. We've had the premiere of another Marvel movie and a Star Wars show to block our memory of Moon Knight even existing. Now that it's over and nobody gives a shit about my opinions or my thoughts on it, this was the perfect time for me to give my thoughts on it. And I have to say, I can't look back on this positively. I don't think by any means this show is bad. It is well made. It is organized perfectly, but it's just not interesting, and it, I think, loses the flavor of what a Moon Knight story should be. Now look, I can't complain too much because this does hit all the Moon Knight beats. Khonshu is in there manipulating Mark. He is kind of schizophrenic in a sense where he doesn't know his identity. It's actually got the suit in there, which if this came out in 2006, it probably wouldn't. It looks and feels semi-Moon Knight-ish. The problem with that is that sometimes, because something looks and feels like what you want it to, that doesn't mean it's going to be a good story. And I think the biggest problem with this show is the choices it makes just aren't good choices. There are story beats, character ideas, narrative directions that just aren't fun or compelling. And I think this is the problem I have with Disney Plus, with these franchise shows on Disney Plus, and with Marvel in general. They are directionless, and they are just extending stories for no reason. I will tell you right now, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, and Moon Knight, none of those shows needed to be 6 episodes. You could do a 2-hour movie and get the same result. Nothing about any of those stories needed to be 6 episodes. I don't care what anybody says, that is the case. I would give some leeway to Falcon and Winter Soldier, maybe, but I don't know. You don't need it. Moon Knight, it hurt the most in particular because there was no narrative flow that made it work. It really just felt like the episode ends, the next episode starts. There's no end cap to the story. We're just ending the scene and we're moving to the next one in the next episode. And that is a bad way to structure your storytelling, especially when you're doing episodic storytelling. It's really lazy and it's not a good flow. So from the get-go, that sucked. And it felt weak, and it made for some really bad decisions to be made on screen and off screen. Now, one of the biggest problems I see a lot of people having with this show is that it doesn't feel like Moon Knight. It doesn't have any of the Moon Knight stuff. It does, but I think where it should be said that it doesn't feel like Moon Knight is really in the fact that the suit is not a prominent feature in this story. And that is a problem. And look, I am all for a well thought out, executed story of Mark dealing with his trauma. I'm here for that. Half of the comic book stories that I love are those stories. But this is not how you do it, okay? I am fine. I am fine with the idea of Mark's trauma coming from a childhood incident. But when you do that, you are suddenly giving too much leeway for Mark's behavior in the present being a part of his past. We're excusing a lot of who Mark will become later on because of that. And that kind of upsets me. And I can get behind the idea he is blamed for his brother's murder, or his brother's death, I should say. And his mother hates him for it. And when she dies, that snaps his response to come in. I'm like, that I can believe. But that also just becomes as an excuse for Mark to now behave badly towards Layla, be this asshole towards Steven. I don't like any of that. And that just comes from a place of Mark is not an unlikable character. He's a flawed character. The biggest problem this show has with Mark Spector is that it wants you to not like him. And looking at the behind the scenes, they're like, we can't have Mark be the focus because he's such an unlikable and arrogant character. He's not. He's tough and hard around the edges. It'd be like seeing this guy who is just angry at the world suddenly open up back to the world and realize that he is lying to himself about his identity, lying to the woman that he is married to, and suddenly coming to terms that he screwed up himself to the point where this is his issue. It's not that we can't make Mark the lead, it's that the show is too scared to have you not respond well to a character at the beginning, so in order to make you feel like you should like Moon Knight, it has to give you Stephen Grant. And that's a shame. And look, I could talk endlessly about the Stephen Grant stuff. Personally, I got sick of it after episode 1. I get why you do it. And this is the thing where it's I hate you because I can clearly see the studio interference and the story beats you are making that are this is why we need Steven, because he can be quirky and funny and go on weird dates and get stood up and you feel bad for him. And why is he sleeping bad? And why can't he do anything normal? And why does he feel like he's useless? And blah-de-dee blah-de-dee blue. I get it. I feel like, yeah, there's you go with the Moon Knight stuff. There's the Stephen Grant thing. Like, and that's the problem I hate, where it's like, I can clearly see why Stephen Grant was given the main focus. He's not like the Stephen Grant we know and love from the comic books, and fine. It's just a Bruce Wayne persona. I don't give a shit. But this is just so obvious, and it's just so everything else in the MCU where the character's kind of quirky, kind of different. Yeah, it's very annoying. Maybe because I never read Moon Knight with having an accent in any of the personas, it came out of nowhere to me, but it was really bad. And it was really annoying. And that's the thing too, is when Stephen Grant is written, or when Jake Lockley is written, they're not written as British and they're not written as Spanish. They're just written as a New Yorkish in different like subsections of New York. So fine, I guess. And that might be a big hindrance for this too, is actually setting it in London, because suddenly now we're just making Moon Knight international, and a big part of his upbringing is being an American and a New Yorker, and like, oh, okay. Oh, it sucks. But the accent for Steven, not my favorite. It was annoying. Oscar was clearly trying, and I respect him for that. But if you are a longtime fan of Moon Knight, hearing that voice and seeing that presentation really just doesn't feel good. It really is just kind of annoying. And it just departures from the character enough where you're like, this isn't what I expected. And it just wasn't what you expected. And again, if you are somebody who's never read a Moon Knight comic, I'm sure there's things to like about this, because it does take opportunities where you're like, oh, that's a fun story beat. That's kind of a narratives thing I like. But the voice was just so obvious, making him the lead really distracted from actually telling a compelling story. It suddenly became, we are thrust into this guy's world. Is this an origin story? No, because why would it be an origin story when we could do an origin story later through a series of flashbacks? I don't know. I just don't understand like the narrative flow to have it open up with Steven when it doesn't feel like the story should open up with Steven. Seeing him just react to this world kind of sucked. I didn't like it. And Steven became a very problematic character towards the end, where he just kind of became the guy who makes jokes. And look, I am somebody who doesn't give a shit what you do with the Mr. Knight suit. In my opinion, the Mr. Knight suit is literally just formal wear. It's what Mark wears when he's talking to like the police or his therapist or something. That's all fine and dandy with me. So if you're going to make it like Steven can summon the suit and put it on, sure. I mean, fine. It's an idea. I'll give you that. Cool. But this goes into another thing. This is just rambling. I don't give a shit at this point. I don't like the show that much now that I'm thinking about it. This is just another thing I cannot stand about this thing. Because this to me, this more than anything else in this show is a fundamental change to the character I cannot get behind. It is the bulletproof suit, where the bullets just bounce off his cape and he can fling them back. I don't like that. I am fine with Moon Knight wearing armor. I am fine with that. Go ahead, do that. But a fundamental part of the character is that he will not block a punch. He will take every hit coming his way. He will get beat up, get bruised, bloody, and battered until he's fucking senseless in the brain, and still come back and do the fight. But the fact that now he is bulletproof and he just can deflect bullets or fly in the sky to get to wherever he needs to go, it takes something out of this character, where it's now suddenly not this intimate story about a man who hates himself so much that he's willing to take the punch. Now it's just, look at me, I can walk into battle and have the bullets bounce off me like it's tough. It's like that scene in The Batman where the bullets are just bouncing off his suit. It's cool, but you want to see Batman get hit. You want to see the punches come in. And this is just a stupid thing the MCU does. It can't let its characters take the hit. In that regard, it's like Fast and the Furious, where it has to be equal amount of punching and it looks fucking stupid. The MCU is like that too, where it can't let its characters get hurt too much because they have to build themselves up. And if it does happen, it's like Hawkeye, where it's played up as a joke. It is frustrating and it sucks. I really dislike what that did, because that is a fundamental change. There is no scene in this, except for maybe like the flashback where Mark is dying at the steps of Khonshu, where you actually see Mark with a black eye, or he's bruised, or he's broken. That sucks, because every time we see this character, he's messed up, he's broken, he's got some scars going on. Show that. Believe in that story. Focus on that a little bit. It's important. Oscar Isaac doing good work here, I guess. It is good work. It is MCU good work. And this is the thing that I've been saying for a long time. He is doing great, but that's just because everybody else in the MCU does bad. I'm sorry. I love these. I love the idea of these movies. I love the people involved in them. There's a lot of bad acting, a lot of just rushed storytelling because it's just franchise food. You're going to eat it and shut up and enjoy it. But when Oscar Isaac does something slightly different, it's being perceived as like an Oscar-worthy performance, no pun intended, when it's not. He's just better at this than other people they have in these movies and stories. So as good as it is, it's not as great as some of like the best acting you see in a film. I'm sorry, that's just the case. He was better in Scenes of a Marriage, which was a series he did relatively recent to this. That had more depth to it. That's where he was good. So, yeah, he was fine. He didn't wear the costume enough, which I get. And sometimes the costume looked way too CG for its own good, and that sucked. The glowing eyes, I understand the need for it, but it did take away from something special with like the dynamic looks in the eyes. It looked very rubbery at times. You're trying to build your identity around like this suit being made of like bandages. It looked really fake, and that's kind of the problem. The Mr. Knight suit did look okay. I can get behind all of that. It's fine. Oscar was fine. I've talked endlessly about May Kalamawe. I've actually done 2 videos talking about her. She is the reason the show works. If May is not in here, you have 2 good actors yelling at each other in stupid words. Like, it really falls apart without her because she grounds both of them, Harrow and Mark. It makes them work. She is perfect. She's the only saving grace of the show, in my opinion, where it becomes something special. Everything else is a substandard Moon Knight story, playing into mythologies that aren't very prominent in the character's world. It's okay. And look, I love Ethan Hawke. I respect him for being like stories or whatever. I'll do whatever I want. I don't give a shit. The Black Phone's coming out soon, so go watch that. And I might be in Knives Out too. Who the fuck knows? I like that Arthur Harrow is just a guy who just says, yeah, I'm going to do it. I get it. I might have been with Khonshu before. Now I'm going to be with Amet. No backstory needed because we get it. He's a cultist. We don't need to see the backstory. I respect them for doing that. That seems likely. I love how he's just like when he releases Ahmed, he's like, hey, if you want to kill me, do it. I don't really give a shit. Just do what you want with me. Okay, that's fine. I like that. Good character. Didn't have anything going for him. That's what I liked about it. Just a character that got his comeuppance and deserved it. So that was fun. I do want to talk about this for a minute because it's very important. The Egyptian, it spends a lot of time with the Egyptian idea of things, and it's there in the comics, but it's never been like the prominent feature of Moon Knight, and maybe that's just because writers don't know what to do with the Egyptian idea. But focusing an entire story on it, it does kind of suck. And I mean, yes, the earlier stories do have a more of like an action adventure thing where he goes around fighting these different people. But I think that's kind of like what people don't think about with the character. This was a bad way of doing it. And I know you hear Kevin and everyone behind the scenes like, it's an action adventure, Raiders of the Lost Ark style. No, it's not. It's really not. You're just doing like getting the piece to the thing and doing the thing. We have the scarab. We're going to go here to the tomb and get the piece to do that. And it's like, oh, this is tiresome. It doesn't flow well either. So that kind of sucked. I'm like, if you're doing the Egyptian stuff, at least lean into it hard. And they do sometimes. You like the feel of Reeves is very fun. And Tawed is fun to look at. And then Ahmet's fun to look at. You're like, that's cool. Like, you're playing with these themes. But does that need to be what Moon Knight is? Does your first outing for Moon Knight need to be a $200 million property? Does anything about this character scream $200 million? Do we need episode 6 to be a huge, big budget fight between a giant bird and a giant crocodile over Europe, or over Egypt, I mean? No, we don't. We don't need to see that. It could be an intimate story about a man dealing with his trauma, and now he's messed up by a god manipulating him. It does kind of want to play into the theme that everybody's manipulating Mark except for Layla. Like, Khonshu is, his parents were in a sense, Steven kind of isn't, but you get what I mean, and Harrow is. Everyone around him is telling Mark's the bad guy. Except for Layla. But it doesn't do anything with that concept. It just kind of says it's there, lets Mark cry for a minute to be a real character, and then kind of fucks off. And that's a problem. Like, okay. I don't like the end episode. I think it's very weak. And I think at the time I was like, yeah, fine, I get it. Big crocodile, sexy, fighting the big bird, it's fine. But the more I think about it, I'm like, wow, what was the point of any of this? What, like, having all the avatars come in and blah blah blah, and then she's like, we're inside the pyramids and we're fighting, and there's portals and jackals and just stupid avatars and shit. Did give us Scarlet Scarab, and Layla's a great character. I'll give it that, but it was so boring and so meaningless. And again, it feels like one of those stories where it's like, we're gonna tell the story to get the character where you know him. I'm like, fuck off. We already know where he's gonna be. Why do we have to do like the pre-story story? I'm so sick of this shit. Halo just did it in that show where it's like, here's all the story to get the character where you know him. We know where he is. Uncharted did it too. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? We know where these characters are gonna be, so start the story there. You don't want to give us the origin, but you did. You did give us the origin, and you didn't even do a good job at it. It's just so frustrating. And I feel like this show actively hates the Mark Spector character, and that's a big problem, because Mark is important. He's hard-edged and tough. He's not a piece of shit you don't like. It's so frustrating. And the editing is so fast, and it's just so loose. And the jokes, they're fine, but they're not interesting. And the designs are just fine, and like the big fucking ship in the fucking sand, and they're just around, and you're just like, oh my god, what? I thought this was a Moon Knight story, and like the way they used the asylum bit, it's not interesting. And I'm just like, come on, you're doing one of the most iconic stories that people know for this character, and then you're just doing it where you walk in any room and have a fucking memory. Oh, it's so lazy, and I'm just like, come on. This character is built on creative ideas. Every single writer and talent takes Moon Knight in a different direction, and all you're doing is exposition dumping where the character needs to be, and you're excusing Mark's behavior through a series of trauma, which I don't like, because, no, it's fine for it to be traumatic, and having him have that experience does signify the character and the creation of Steven. But now what you're doing is letting Mark get away, if anything, because, like, don't forget, I accidentally killed my brother, and now he's okay being whatever he wants to be. I don't like that. It's weird. There is some good action at times where scenes do look good when they're fighting. When they fight the Midnight Man, I'm like, this is a nice looking scene with bad ideas and, like, the suit blocking. I did like when Mark gets stabbed with the big pillar. That was pretty cool. I did like seeing that, but then it's like, boop-de-boop. Let's just go to the next scene. Poorly paced, poorly edited, very just... You got two guys who have made some very intense movies, and you got Mohammed who really focus on the Egyptian lore. Why isn't this more, like, scary? And not just, like, dark scary, but you look at something like The Mummy from 1999, there's some intense stuff in there. There's, like, actual, like, depth and fear being presented at different scenes, but kids can handle it. There's, like, one scene in, like, the middle of the show where a weird, like, mummy thing going... is like stalking them, and it's following them around, and that's a terrifying moment. If you want to lean into like the Egyptian stuff, why not do more of that instead of having a bunch of people stand in a pyramid talk about why Khonshu's a bitch? That's something I do like about this, I guess, that everyone think Khonshu sucks, because he does. He's the worst of it. But it's like, instead of giving money to the Khonshu stand-in, which we should have, and like the Amet one and the Tawet one, why can't we use the money for that CG and maybe, I don't know, get an actor to play Bushman and actually tell the origin of Moon Knight and actually have us feel for Mark in that sense, than of just showing him referencing Moon Knight or referencing Bushman and then falling at the statue of Khonshu. The sequence looked cool, but it's kind of annoying. And again, you could say what you will about the bandages wrapping themselves around Mark. It sucks because suddenly it's supernatural and not a man who is building an identity for himself. It's... I'm just very disappointed because this is my character. This is the one I tell people so much I love. I have every comic book. I have action figures. I love Moon Knight so much. And when people watch this, they like it, but I'm like, this isn't what I like about the character. This isn't doing an accurate representation of what I like. Is there stuff in here that is accurate? Yeah, kind of. Great acting is important for the role. Playing with some Egyptian mythology is important. But then it's just like, what if we do basic lines of dialogue from MCU stuff that's very interchangeable? What if we have generic action sequences and generic characters we are building for this? I don't get what happened here. Actually, that's a lie. I do get what happened here. We can't take too many creative risks. We can pretend we're taking risks. We can show you oh my God, the fucking poster where it's the bloody hand of Mark Spector holding one of his crescent fucking moon weapons, and there's blood dripping from it. And then there's no blood in the show. I hate them so much for that, because it's like, what is the point of this? Why are you pretending you're marketing? This is like the thing with Hawkeye, where I'm like, Hawkeye is doing so hard to say this is the Fraction and Aja run, and then it's not. You're trying so hard to like pretend you're dark and edgy. It's like, look at our posters, they're bloody and dark. Look at the directors we got, they work on dark shit. Look at our writer, he made The Witcher. The Witcher was dark AF. Like, look how dark we are. And then it's just like, whoa, time out, let's all chill the F out for a minute, blah, 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 blah. What's going on here? Abba dabba gabba, wabba dabba dabba da. Like, what? What? What is that? Where'd that come from? And then it's just like, I'm Mark Spector. I'm mean to everybody, including my wife, because I can't be a real character, because if they let me be a real character, people would see I'm a bad person. It's like, yes, you're supposed to be a bad person. That's how we find sympathy with you, when you learn your fucking lesson, you dipshit. And I'm Khonshu. I'm just going to say exposition and kind of be a nuisance to people and have good CGI in the darkness and bad CGI in the light. Okay. And then it's like, I'm Tawet, and it's just like, hello, I'm the one who should be Anubis, but they didn't want to use Anubis because a hippo is funnier than Anubis, because you can't make him scary, because Anubis would be scary, and I'm on the boat and stuff, and I'm all about childbirth and fertility, but I'm the dead god now, and for some reason when Layla gets my avatar, she's a bug with wings that are very falcon-like, but I'm a hippo. And then you have like Ethan Hawke doing like this raspy thing where he's like, talk to my stick and it'll say if you're worth living or not, and then lasers will fill the sky. And then my big crocodile, who's very sexy to the guy recording this for some reason, will be like, we're kind of the same, Khonshu, but you don't want to enact justice now. You want to do it before or after, I can't remember. We'll fight on the pyramids. And then, I guess, learn a lesson in the end, but have everything wrap up easily, because I'm pretending to be a doctor in another reality that's no longer happening, except when Steven's sleeping. And then Mark's there too. And it's just like, well, okay. I do respect the ending trying to be ambiguous, where it's like, we wake up in the hospital and Ethan Hawke's character gets fucked up, and I'm like, that's fine, that's kind of cool. But not really. You know, it's just simple MCU bullshit, and I don't like that, because this character should be special. I'm not saying do the Netflix thing where it's like dark brooding and whatever. It's just like, you could have tried harder than taking the easy ways out, than giving the stupid big budget finale where everybody's fighting in this thing. If you did the finale where we're just doing something inside the mental hospital and they're dealing with their trauma there, and that's how they defeat him, I think that's a little more Moon Knight, because he's not an active character who seeks out to fight people. Fighting comes to him. That's what I think should happen, but whatever. It was completely standard and kind of ugly and kind of boring, with great actors doing basic work. It just looks like it's impressive because the rest of the shit you see is bad. And it sucks. And it's like not a lot of Moon Knight in the costume. And the times it is, it's super-powered magical bullshit that isn't really the character. You are not letting Mark be a true character. Aside from Layla, every character is interchangeable and boring. Giving Mark the trauma takes away from him learning a lesson in a sense. Allowing all of this to work sucks, and your marketing was bullshit. Your marketing was bullshit. I'm sorry. It really was. An action-adventure character for Moon Knight, I can get behind. But if you do it this poorly, I'm sorry. And now when I look back on my reviews of this show, I was being very lenient. I was like, I want this to be good because this is my guy. And the fact that I can look back and be like, it made choices I don't like, kind of sucks. It kind of sucks. But isn't any Moon Knight better than no Moon Knight? I don't think so. And I say that because currently going on in the comic books is the best Moon Knight comic to ever come out. Jed McKay and Alessandro Cappuccio are telling an incredible story in the comic books. There are 11 issues out of it right now. If you are a fan of this show, I recommend reading this comic book, looking at it, going in detail, and seeing what this character could mean. It's not just your basic action-adventure crap where we fight like a stupid mummy and a dog. It's just more like an exploration of a guy dealing with his trauma in a very interesting setting. So please read that comic book opposed to this show. I don't know how much more I can talk about this. I went into this video thinking I'm just going to be expressing my feelings and opinions, but the more I just sit here and think about it, the more I'm just disappointed in how ugly everything looked, how washed everything looked, how basic everything looked, and how it completely, almost tonally misses what the character should be about. But you know what? If this could get the wider audience to want to read Moon Knight, that's positive, I guess. But then they're going to read Moon Knight and be like, hey, why isn't he fighting this? Why isn't he fighting Egyptian-based characters? I'll tell you why. He doesn't normally do that. There's a couple in like the original run based in Egypt, but more often than not, they are characters created by Mark's own undoing. That's it. That's it. There's not a lot of there's no fucking other avatars he plays off against. That is so dumb. That is just forced world building for a character who doesn't need forced world building. Keep things closed, man. Like, come on. This isn't going to get a season 2 because it's got... Where do you go for season 2? Do you have them fight Bushmen? Wouldn't that just be like a step down? I'm going to save it. I actually have thoughts on where you could take it for another season, but I'm just going to save it. I don't like this show. I was positive in my reviews, but the more I think about it, the more I was just lying to myself into thinking I liked this. I wish it was more interesting. I wish it had more going for it. I wish it looked better. I wish it flowed better. I wish it sounded better. I wish Disney would stop making 6-episode bullshit. If you want to put it on Disney Plus, just make it a 2.5-hour movie on Disney Plus. Look at fucking Chip and Dale. That actually worked. It's not a good movie, but it worked for what it was doing. Don't fucking push all this crap into this thing. Just, like, get rid of some of the stupid storylines you don't need. Do we need Layla in here? Yes, but is she necessary if it's a 2.5-hour movie? No. Do we need the other stuff in the fucking pyramid where we're going to all this shit? We could just open it up with Mark as Moon Knight and not have to worry about this other crap. Like, it's so frustrating. And having Jake be like the tease at the end, I'm like, everybody knows this. Every fucking YouTuber's doing a video talking about it. You're not doing a big shocking reveal. I'm done. I'm done. My final thoughts on Moon Knight are this. It misses the character. It looks ugly. It lied to us about what it was trying to be. It doesn't do service to the character or the world. The MCU is honestly not that interesting anymore. And I think this is the nail in the coffin for the 6-episode stuff. Miss Marvel could fix it because that actually looks creative. But I hate it. I'm kind of sick of these stupid fucking Disney Plus shows. I am. This was so bad. And so uninteresting, and I did not like it. So, just quickly, to give it a scale out of 10, entire first season of Moon Knight, I'm going to give a 4 out of 10. That is going to do it for this review of Moon Knight and my final thoughts on the show. I'm sorry in advance for how long this is and how angry I am, but that's just it. So thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Praise be Khonshu. Maybe season 2 will be better. If we're not getting a season 2. You kidding me? There's no fucking way we're getting a season 2.
Oh, demon, face the vengeance of the Moon Knight.